Well, welcome to They Think It's All Sober, creator and founder of Big Drop, Rob Fink.
Hello, good to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Monday morning, East London.
Monday morning, 10 a.m, Hackney.
Yeah.
Where else would you choose to be?
How was your commute in?
My commute in was beautiful as always. Trains from Ipswich, so actually it's not too bad. It's like an hour.
I must just say, I'm not sure if you are into football, but we're both West Ham fans.
Yeah, no,
so
we're not talking
very
about
grateful
West Ham,
for
no.
this.
We won't sit here and gloat. And,
My son's following it and he's like, oh, what's the score, Daddy? I'm like, oh, it's half, Ipswich are going to survive by draws. That's how we're going to stay in the Premier, really. And I was like, half-time, 1-1. I was like, okay, right, fine. Then flick. Yeah, this ain't looking
Just
good.
Calvin Phillips finally doing something good for West Ham.
just anything. It's great news. But probably beats my 3-hour commute from my way. It's a nightmare. It physically shouldn't be.
People that listen to this podcast by now must be like, for fuck's sake, Tom, just get the train. Every week you're like, it was a pilgrimage.
Can I tell you how much my peak train ticket is? You probably have an idea. From Thatcham, which is my nearest train station, peak train ticket is £70.
Okay, that is a mug off.
99.
From Ipswich.
99 peak return, because if I want to leave before 4 o'clock, God forbid that I would want to travel at 4:15, £100 return.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice one. I'm glad the railway services are getting there.
They think it's all train line.
Yeah. So, but yeah, well, like I said, thanks for joining us. Here to talk about everything Big Drop, which is, I think, it's been like a slow burner for me and progressing into one of my favorite zero brands that I've had. Started for me in Cornwall, but we'll come on to this. Down at a little place called the Tap House. I remember vividly having my first Big Drop there, and I loved it. So I have a strong kind of affinity with Big Drop and Cornwall, which is my almost second home, I suppose. So,
nice. Okay.
But yeah, we'll get into that shortly. So, but I guess to kind of kick things off, it'd be great to know a bit of the kind of backstory behind Big Drop and how it came about. So you guys were founded in 2016?
2016 was the first beer. Yeah.
Nice.
Hang on, Tom. Just because we're not doing our normal format doesn't mean you can not get into my fucking time machine.
Right, sorry. Because the last podcast I did was without you, and I didn't do a time machine.
You are an arsehole.
Oh no, let's do it.
Sorry.
Let's do it.
Sorry,
Let's step back in time.
Your mind is about to be blown. We're going to step back in time here to the founding of Big Drop.
Yeah.
Yes, that is it.
There we go.
And we're back.
Nice.
See? That was a better... I'm pissed off. 70 episodes in, and Rob has come in and done a better time machine.
That was actually great. I think I'm joking.
You can sample out that one. You can have that for free.
I've been fully mugged off here. This is it. Oh, career over.
So Big Drop. What was the seed that
what was the seed? Yes, children was the seed.
Right.
So if you travel back in time in the time machine, but take yourself back to say 2013. Let's go back a little bit further. So I used to, for my sins in a previous life, be a lawyer. I was one of the good guys. Yeah. We used to sue insurance companies when they didn't pay claims.
Fuck you, insurance company.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So we were one of the good guys. Anyway, so I'd started a law firm with another guy, a business partner, and he was the good lawyer, and he would sit there and do the proper legal work that you'd actually want to pay somebody for, and I would do the rustling up business. You call it networking, business development, but in the what I think of as the olden times, that fundamentally went going down the pub. So I was in the city. Yeah, I was in the city down the road. So you go to the pub, and you have a couple of beers at lunchtime, and then you might meet someone that you want to talk to. So, oh, should we go and have a glass of wine or something? And then you go and have a curry, and then you have a couple of bottles of wine, and then you have a brandy, and before you know it, you're rolling in.
Business is done.
Business is done. My work here is done. Drop mic. Thanks very much. Case in. Ching ching. Done. And is it so what was I? I was 30. So we started a law firm. I mean, it was nuts. I'd only been practicing law for about 2 years. So I was like, yeah, let's start a law firm in the city. Why not? And I'd only been practicing for about 2 years. So it's like, this is great. I'm 30 years old, and fundamentally my business, my business is paying for me to go to the pub. And, the Gaucho, I was going to the Gaucho, you're 30 years old going to the Gaucho. First time I went to the Gaucho, turns up with a steak, and I thought I was being really sophisticated. So I was probably about 25 then, fresh off the boat in the middle of London. And steak turns up, and I say, is there any chance you've got a steak knife? And the waitress just looked at me and she was like, you won't need a steak knife. Like melt in your mouth steaks kind of thing. And the ones that I'm used to are Suffolk steaks, where my dad just like crisps it like this. Oh, fillet steak,
chainsaw to it.
Exactly, yes. That's how we like our steaks done. Sorry, I digress. Anyway, so basically I was out on the piss most afternoons, which is lovely. And then I had a baby. And what I always think about is that if I drunk alcohol in a normal way, i.e. perhaps in the evening, you go to work, you have a sandwich for lunch and a cup of tea, and then you come home and you put your baby to bed and have some dinner and you have a glass of wine, okay, fine, not a problem. But actually, if you roll in at 7 o'clock in the evening, having been literally in the pub for 6 hours, your wife is not that keen on you bathing the newborn baby.
No.
Not a thing. So I thought, well, this is rubbish, isn't it? I've got a baby, I'm a grown up, I want to be a good dad, so I should be putting my son to bed and reading him stories, and instead I'm like, hey, great day at work, darling, it was amazing. So I stopped drinking for about a year, didn't touch a drop, but genuinely still had to go to the pub because it was my job, a bit of my job was to go out and meet all the brokers and underwriters and people and try and rustle up business. So you end up going to the pub. I'm not drinking. What am I going to drink? So are we allowed to say brands? I won't slag them off. But Beck's Blue was the only alcohol-free beer that existed in the universe at that time.
We always talk about our memories of Beck's Blue back in the day, because a lot of the pubs wouldn't even keep them refrigerated because no one drank them. So they'd go over and be like, blow the dust off the top, and you'd be like,
just rub it down on your jumper. There you go. Yeah.
How to make a bad drink worse.
Slightly under
make
room
it warm.
temperature, but
now
not
rat
that much.
footprints, sign me up.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a pub, I used to do a lot of drinking in Leadenhall Market in the city. There's a pub called the New Moon, very nice, Green King pub, I think. And I went in there one of the first times I wasn't drinking, and the marketing genius as well of Beck's Blue is that they used to sell it in 275ml bottles. So they're charging less than an alcoholic beer, but obviously there's no duty, but there's less beer anyway. So I ordered, what I used to do was drink 2 Beck's Blue in a pint glass. Because then you're standing around, all right, Dave, right, I'm on a beer, kind of thing, and nobody necessarily, pays much attention. And the woman behind, she was like, yeah, there you go, it's 2 Beck's Blue in a pint glass. She was like, do realise that's like £6.50 for that pint, don't you? And she couldn't get her head around why, as indeed we've all experienced however many years ago, people just didn't get why that was a thing. Anyway, sorry, long story short, I'm wanging on, but I don't really drink lager. I'm not a lager drinker. That wasn't my tipple of choice in beer. I liked, I was drinking cask ales or pale ales or IPAs or stouts, dark beers, stuff like that, and it just didn't exist as a beverage style at all. The only exception, actually, to be fair, was Nanny State. Brewdog were brewing Nanny State at that point, and I drank that. I remember going to a barrister's do and drank one of those, and it blew my mind because I was like, this has got hops in it.
Yeah.
This is insane.
And it's got taste. And
it's got
flavour
taste, and nothing against Nanny State, but I would argue now that we've had this massive explosion, it's good, but there are better beers out there. But at the time, it was like, bloody hell, this is amazing. So then I just thought, why don't we see if we can give this a crack and make some pale ales? And so the first beer was a stout, because there was no such thing as alcohol-free stout.
Amazing. Just rewinding quickly into sort of the well, no, I was just interested around, not your law career per se, but obviously with us working in music, it's such a difficult thing sometimes to explain to people when you work in an industry where so much of the business is done around alcohol. That when you do decide not to drink, did you ever talk to people about it? Did you tell people you weren't drinking, or did you just keep this pretend drink the Beck's Blue?
You kind of, I think as I remember, I would generally get my own Beck's Blue from the bar and sort of stay out of the round a little bit, although I would have to buy the drinks because I'm the one looking for the work, as it were, from a professional perspective. But do you know what? It was easier to say to people, I'm just not drinking at the moment because I've got a baby, than it was, and drink a Beck's Blue in a pint glass, than it was to drink a Coke or an orange juice. If you're in the round, and it's that great British institution of the round, what are you having? Oh, Stella, Guinness, gin and tonic, and a Coke. What the fuck are you drinking a Coke for, Rob? Whereas actually, if you just go, no, I just have a Beck's Blue, I'm not drinking, because most people were generally all right with it, which I did find quite surprising, because at the time, certainly, I suspect less so now, it was male. Yes, women were obviously in that law and that insurance arena, but it was mostly men of a certain age who just, stood at the bar drinking beer. And I thought, this is going to be hard yards not to get the shit ripped
some
out
stick.
of me.
Yeah.
But actually, I can't lie, it was all right.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we always say, like, especially now, like, I think it's becoming more widely accepted that, like, there's a lot of more sober curious people and sober people in general, and we shouldn't have to give a justification for not drinking. But like Jamie says, in this industry, certainly like law, city workers, us in music and like the entertainment sector, you definitely do feel like there might be some element of judgment. And with me, when I first stopped, I was like, I'm taking 100 days off. So in my head, it was like almost putting like a time limit on it, and people were going, no one gave me any shit for it. They were like, oh, fair play.
It's like a challenge. It's like, you can justify doing something.
Yeah.
Somebody always, the other thing that works is if you say it's a bet.
Yeah.
So you say, oh yeah, no, my mate bet me that I couldn't have a drink for a year, 6 months, days or whatever. And I go, no, good one. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it?
Someone getting a Coke.
It's explaining that, isn't it? But like now, like we shouldn't need the justification. But weirdly, like for me, I kind of felt like, certainly in that like infancy of not drinking, it was just like some form of like barrier where I wouldn't have any judgment. But it kind of turns out that people give way less of a fuck than you really think anyway. So
yeah, and I think there is, the world is just fundamentally such a massively different place, from what it was 10 years ago, and so many things have moved on just like that.
Yeah,
and just not having to give a reason for stuff. It's just the way it is. And actually now, if you're in a group, there's like 6 people or whatever, and somebody wants to be a dick, then actually the rest of the group just go, shut up. Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
He's not drinking, or whatever it is. That's just the way it is, and nobody's any the worse off for it. So let's just get on with our lives.
Yeah, 100%. So you had your kid, you did a year off. And what point during that year were you like, I'm going to start my own thing? Was it towards the end of it, or?
It was towards the end of it, yeah. Because it was still like 20, so I'm only 4 years into this new business. We've got the kid. So it's like, I'm still trying to work that. And there's just, there was a lot of Googling about how do you start a brewery? How do you make alcohol-free beer? So it probably wasn't until the next year that I started to think about it seriously. And then the first beer didn't come out until 2016. So it took me a year or so to actually get round to doing that. But, I blame the new house and the new baby and the new business for my time.
What was the vision though? Because I guess it's a brave move to be like, right, I'm going to readdress my relationship with alcohol because I've got a kid. The market feels empty for it. I'm going to go do it. Did you have any prior knowledge? Was this just like balls to the wall, I'm going to fucking go for this?
I had no idea what I was doing in any regard or in any respect. Like, it was nuts. If you look back on it now, the law firm kind of made sense because I'd been a lawyer previously. I had experience. I knew people. When I said to my wife, I think me and guys, David, we think we want to start this law firm. She was like, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about it. But yeah, okay, that makes sense. Fast forwards, 5, 6 years. Right now, what I want to do, having bought a house and got a newborn kid, is I'd like to start one of the world's first alcohol-free brewing companies with no knowledge of I still don't know how you make beer. I just want to put this right out. I have no idea how you make beer. It's got something to do with grain and hot water, and there are these big stainless steel things that I get shown quite a lot by really proud brewers. Rob, come and, you want to brew this? That's fine. Let me show you around this brewery. I'm like, mate, seriously? No.
There's always an odd warm, because we did a tour of one, didn't we? And there was just this odd warm scent.
Yes.
I can't quite describe what the scent is.
Yeah, it's just
damp, warm,
fermenty, yeasty stuff. Yeah. So I had no idea. I'll jump ahead for a second, but like once I'd done it all and we had a couple of beers as samples, I was taking them into pubs and saying, hello, would you like to buy some beer? And they would say, No, you buy the beer. We're the pub. What? I go, no. I've got these beers, a little plastic bag.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Huh? Alcohol free, that is. Yeah, what? Hey, I don't buy the beer. Oh, who buys the beer? Well, the manager maybe. Oh, is he in? Is she in? Oh, they're in on Thursday, so I'll come back on Thursday. You speak to the manager. Would you like to buy some beer? You buy the beer. Same conversation. And then eventually they're like, no, we've got a wholesaler. Oh, right. What's a wholesaler? Oh, fuck off out my pub. It was like I had no idea. And then eventually I worked out that you need to get the wholesaler and the distributor. And anyway, so didn't have a clue. No idea what I was doing.
And what was like the first? Did you know what you wanted to make, or was it like talk us through the process? Because I find this fascinating. Because sometimes you meet people in this space and they're very like it's a very calculated move. They're from like the city.
Don't trust those people. Never trust those people.
But that's what I love. It feels so raw.
Never trust anyone with a business plan.
So you went for a stout?
Went for a stout, yeah, because it was literally like I like stout. I do like, and I don't. I mean, I think I had a Guinness at the weekend, but I don't drink Guinness per se. But I do like a darker beer. So if I go into a pub, now is a great season for me. Autumn's kicking in, darker beers start hitting the taps. Brilliant, love it. Couldn't find an alcohol-free stout. There was one beer that was made by a brewery in Portugal that said it was a stout, but actually it was just a beer with caramel colouring in. It wasn't a stout in any way at all. So I was like, let's make a stout. And then to get technical slightly, so eventually I met a guy called Johnny Clayton, who is still our brewer today, and he does all the recipes and all the production and everything else. Like, he's actually the unsung genius of Big Drop. And I met him because I'd wandered into this brewery in the Archers in Bermondsey and said, I've got this idea, I'd like to make alcohol-free beer, could you help? And they said, oh, maybe speak to Johnny over there. And this sort of crazy mad-haired scientist guy sort of pops his head up with a Doc Brown in Back to the Future.
Yeah. That's exactly what I just pictured there,
But with black hair, it's like wrench in his hand. Oh, what do you want? What do you want? I was like, I want to make an alcohol-free stout. He's like, yeah, all right, fine. But he comes up with this proposition that fundamentally, I'll get technical for just a tiny little bit. In beer and in alcoholic drinks, one of the things that enhances flavour is the alcohol. This is one of the great challenges that alcohol-free drinks have got, is that we don't have the alcohol to enhance flavour. Alcohol itself is tasteless, but it's got that viscosity, it coats your mouth and flavour stays there and it lingers. So if you take that away, you have a problem that you need to deal with in some way, and lots of people deal with it in different ways nowadays. But he said, well, if you want to make a stout, what we'll do is we'll make a milk stout, which is a very traditional style of English beer. And fundamentally, you add lactose. So it's a dairy product, it's like milk powder, but that's an unfermentable sugar. So that substitutes out for the alcohol in terms of giving you the flavour and the mouthfeel and the viscosity. So he comes up with this beer, and I still, to this day, the recipe, I don't think has really changed since 2016, and I still maintain I would say that is probably our best beer, and hand on heart, I would say that's one of the great alcohol-free beers of all time, and it is just a good beer. That's it. It's a good beer that happens to have no alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And that was always the goal. We want to make great beer, and sometimes we don't, but that's what we're aiming for, that happens to be alcohol-free.
Yeah. I think that's a really beautiful thing about the space, isn't it, when you nail something like that? Because ultimately, yes, as someone who isn't drinking or doesn't want to drink alcohol, you are looking for something that fills the mental void in a way, but ultimately, like, you do want something that just tastes great. And if the taste comes
flavor.
first.
It's flavour. That's it. And all we want, that was all we wanted to do. And it does make me cross now that there's still people, and there's the big brewers doing it sometimes, and there's startups doing it sometimes, that put out, I don't know anything about non-alc wine or spirits, so I don't really talk in that area, but in the non-alc beer space, people still put out shit, and it drives me up the wall. And that's not me saying, every single Big Drop beer is like the finest beer known to mankind, but they're good beers. They are good beers. And sometimes I drink stuff and I'm like, this is crap. And it really winds me up, because it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people doing really good. It's not just us doing good stuff. There's loads of people doing good stuff. Yeah. So I'm like, why the hell are you putting out crap? Because then you lose potential consumers, because there's still this huge audience of people who maybe don't drink non-alcoholic beer because they still remember Caliber and the 1980s and these genuinely terrible beers So if you give them something, if you convince them to try a non-alcoholic beer, it's got to be good.
And if it's crap, they just won't.
They won't touch it again.
They won't touch it again.
We tried one which will remain nameless in our Zeros Championship that was so bad we both genuinely spat it in the bin. And I have a pretty strong palate.
Yeah,
it was a German Zero, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you're right there. And I was like, now when the market's obviously boomed in this space, and there's a lot of product out there.
Yeah,
you're right. There's no excuse to be releasing a substandard product, especially that's trying to substitute something that people actually really enjoy. Unless whoever started like some really fucking niche.
Yeah, but I'd argue stout is the niche place to start, and you've kind of nailed that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only like what I looked at it the other day. It's about 5-6% of our total volume is the stout. And
which is that the Galactic Milk Stout?
The Galactic
was it
Milk
named
Stout.
that from the beginning?
No, it wasn't actually. No, I've got a little shelf of all of our label iterations. So at the beginning, it was just Milk Stout.
Nice.
That was it, and then we named them all a couple of years later, I think.
So let's talk about, I guess, the inception of Big Drop. Was it called Big Drop? How did that all come about? Did anyone buy your beers? Talk us through the first year and a half of
how did you survive?
How did you survive? Happily, I was taking dividends from the law firm. Never start a business unless you've still got money coming in from the last business.
Yeah.
We called it Big Drop. The inception. So I have a co-founder. My business partner is one of my best friends. And he's he's a branding guy, he's a design guy, he's a social media guy, tech guy. So I was like, all the things that I don't do or understand. I was like, right, congratulations, there's some sweat equity, you're in charge of this. And I said to him, right, you've got to come up with a name. And the only criteria was it needs to be something that I can't sound like a dick ordering it in a pub. Because even at the time, there was snifters of people starting to explore this space, and especially around. I'll be careful what I say, but there was a bit of virtue signaling going on around the whole "I don't drink," and I was like, I don't want that because at that point I did drink. I was drinking again. I want to be able to go into a pub and ask for a pint of this beer that we're going to make, and it just sound like a beer. So we, the three of us go into a pub and it's like, right, I have a pint of Big Drop, pint of Stella and a pint of Guinness.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying I'd like an alcohol-free beer. What alcohol-free beers have you got? The goal was always to create a brand that was big enough. We're not there yet, but, was big enough that everyone understands that it's alcohol-free.
Yeah.
But you don't have to put the alcohol-free.
Yeah, you don't have to make a song and dance about it.
Exactly. You're just asking for a pint of beer. That was the whole point. And Big Drop itself, so he came up with the name Big Drop, and it's... there is a sort of very slight meaning to it. So it's supposed to be a big drop in alcohol from here to here.
Nice.
But also a big drop of flavour.
Yeah, nice.
So there was a sort of a little bit of a meaning behind it, but not so much that, you go into a pub and you just think, I don't want to ask for this because, it makes me sound like an idiot. The intention was always just to make a good beer that was alcohol-free. That was it.
Nice.
Sorry, was there another bit to that question? I feel like I've wandered off.
No, that was bang on. And then I guess I was just asking when did you start to see some traction? Did any of these wholesalers buy in? Did you brew any different type of beers? What was the... So
the when I left the day job, as it were, was May 2017, because there was a guy who was a Swedish guy, and in Sweden you can't buy liquor, as they say, in a liquor shop. You have to go to a state-run liquor shop called a Systembolaget, which you may know, which you may have come across in your travels. But because it's state-run, they also have an obligation to provide good alcohol-free choices as well. So they're not just there to sell you vodka and take loads of tax. They're also there, ironically, to encourage you to make sensible drinking choices. Anyway, this bloke phones me up, and the way that they do listings in their shops is they put out tenders. So Systembolaget says, right, this month we would like a 6% IPA, we would like some blush cider, we'd like this, we'd like that, we'd like that. And if you're interested, you can then submit your products to go in. He phones me up and he says, Systembolaget want an alcohol-free stout. I actually can't find any apart from yours. And I've tried it and it's really good. So would you like to apply for the tender? And I was like, yeah, sure. And at this point, we're probably making about a pallet a day, which is about 100 cases of beer. And we're selling it through an online store called drydrinker.com, which is still going. I don't know if you know them, but they're really good. They were a big help early on. And one pub in Covent Garden, which is closed now, but it was outside the Opera House, and there was a guy there, and he just like, I'd walked in and said, "Hello, would you like to buy some beer?" And he was like, "Yes, I would actually." Is it alcohol free? Amazing. So on our website, I remember it was like, where you can buy Big Drop, and it was like this website and that pub.
Yeah.
And that was it. So it's like 1 pallet a month. And I go, okay, yeah, how much? Well, yeah, that'd be great. Oh, how much do you think you need? Well, I don't know. It'd probably be quite small to start with. So maybe like 20 pallets a month, something like that. And it's like, okay. Thinking, how do you dial up production from 1 pallet a month to 20 pallets a month?
Yeah.
So I put the phone down, and it was like, I think we're going to need a bigger brewery, lads. So it was at that point, it was like, okay, well, maths, numbers. Well, if you sell 20 pallets of beer and it costs you this much and you get this much out, then maybe that works. So it was Sweden.
Wow.
Was the tipping point.
That's interesting. Like you never think of, I guess in a similar with music sometimes, like, that artist broke out of Germany, like Lewis Capaldi. He's like, he first got big in Germany and then it just goes everywhere else.
Yeah,
I guess Swedish tender.
It was a Swedish tender. There was that, and then you just, and you can just, then it's the whole brand building thing. You can just build on stuff and make noise about it. And we went to the Stockholm Beer Festival, and at that point, which I think might have been the next year, but we were doing a brown ale, like a bitter. And we don't do it anymore because there wasn't a big enough market for it. But it won the overall best beer in the Stockholm Beer Festival.
Wow.
Not non-alcoholic,
just in general.
Just in general.
Wow.
And like the guys who were in Stockholm, I don't know why I didn't go. I like Stockholm. I should have gone, but they phoned me and they were like, "Fucking won! Like, we've won this model." And I was like, "Oh, that's good. Best alcohol-free beer." And they're like, "No. Like, there's 1,000 beers here. Like literally, there's 1,000 beers. It's and it wasn't like some tiny unit with 6 breweries. It was like, no, there's 1,000 beers here, and we've won the best bit. So then you just start making noise, and you get a bit of traction and stuff like that.
Amazing. And what was like the brand vision at that point? Did you have the branding that we know today?
I don't do vision.
Vision I'm getting that.
Yeah,
Chuckle vision, maybe.
Yeah, chuckle vision. What's your vision, Rob? Well, those 2 blokes with the moustaches
From Rotherham.
What was the brand vision? So it's always really been. Someone said to me the other day, like, now that you've got all these other brands, how do you distinguish yourself? Even if you were the OG in the UK, like, what makes you stand out from the others? And it has always been. And I know flavour is subjective, and I know other people like other beers more, and that's fine. I get that. But it's always just been about, well, can we make good beer? That's it. Sure. It happens to be alcohol free. And then I think, so back then, was it any more complicated than that? No, I don't think so. We always wanted to make the brand big and fun and bold. I was looking at, I was in Sainsbury's the other day, and I looked at where we're not listed. Sainsbury's buyer. And I was looking at the mods, like the shelves that have got the alcohol-free beer. So all these different brands. And the overwhelming palette was light blue. And I was like, how really boring is that? That's like, Big Drop, we're a craft beer. There's so many craft beers around, but what stands them out is they're big, they're bold, they're vibrant, they're fun, and those were the sort of boxes that we wanted to tick. It goes back to this: we don't want to be seen as abstemious or virtue signaling. It's just good beer. Just drink a beer, have some fun. It's fine.
I think that's kind of how you came about it, right? That sort of like bold branding and
I think so. I mean, like, what point was it that obviously you started with the stout, but I'm probably more familiar with like the Pine Trail and like the Reef Point. I think is what I had first and became aware of like the brand at that point. So when was the inception of that?
So we were definitely doing more beers. So it was 2017, 2018. Yeah, certainly by the end of 2018, we did the Pale Ale, what is the Pine Trail. That came out then. Then we did an IPA. I really hung back from doing a lager. I didn't want to do. I like Reef Point actually. It's much better than our last lager. Reef Point I think is a banger, but I really hung back from it because I wanted to be a craft brewer. I wanted to be that. We don't exist for lager. We exist for all the others. But then eventually you just our sales guys were coming in saying it's great, but they really want lager. Can we just do a lager?
The
pods are
so it just made business sense. I guess
just
at that
business.
point.
Just business.
Did you start to see the market change at a point pre-COVID? Because I'm always fascinated by this, because a lot of people, always say, oh, COVID was a changing point because people were at home and didn't want to drink, blah, blah, blah. Had you started to see a shift in AF prior to COVID in terms of the market, or was COVID quite a pivotal point in your journey as well?
And I know how to time it, because we just started our first crowdfunding round in March 2020, and then literally, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to conquer the universe with pubs and restaurants. And oh no, there are no pubs, bars, and restaurants. Okay, we'll conquer the universe in a different way. So I remember the timing quite specifically. What I do remember is at the time I was banging on about AF on draft. That was the thing we were talking about. It was like, this is going to happen. Pubs, particularly pubs, need to provide good alcohol-free beer on draft. Yeah. And then COVID. So it was starting to shift. We were having more conversations with pubs pre-COVID, just in that sort of end of 19, beginning of 20 kind of time frame. And then COVID obviously happened, and then you pivot to an e-com model, as everybody did, and you're doing direct to consumer, which is great. I have to tell this story, otherwise he'll never forgive me. But my business partner James ended up in an edition, I think it was GQ, so it's like mid-pandemic, mid-lockdown, and it was like, the top 10 things to do in a pandemic. And we'd started an online pub quiz, so there were others that came after us, but I think we were one of the first people to go, actually, we can do an online pub quiz. You buy your big drop, we'll send you out some snacks. Nice. James pre-recorded all this pub quiz stuff, usual technical stuff. But anyway, he sat between David Attenborough at number 3 and I don't know, Gary Barlow at number 6. It was like, number 5, the Big Drop Pub Quiz on YouTube. So I was like, we were quite pleased with that. But then the problem, I think, has been up until quite recently, is coming out of the pandemic. Obviously, hospitality industry just took a spanking, you would never believe, obviously. And then they came out of that, and it was, cash is king. We need to sell stuff now, and what we can't do is take a chance on a category, and not just Big Drop. It's starting. We're coming out of it now, but certainly, first year or so after the pandemic, nobody wanted to talk to you about alcohol-free on draft. Yeah. It was like, how much Stella Artois can I push through this tap? Yeah. How much Moretti can I push through this tap? That was it. So pandemic, I think we did all, we survived, we pivoted, but it definitely, as a whole, I think AF on draft, it did pull it back by a couple of years. I think we'd be in a very different place if not COVID. Yeah,
I think for any business in its relative infancy to make it through the pandemic, just full stop, is a big win. So I think you take that one.
We kept everybody. We furloughed lots, but we kept everybody. We didn't let anybody go. We had a couple of people doing the picking and packing of the boxes and everything. And because the good thing is my business partner's a techie guy, built an online store in literally 3 days. Yeah. It was nuts.
Perfect.
And then it was like, right, go and get some pallets of beer, put them in this guy's conservatory. One of our guys had it in his conservatory at his parents' house. Orders went through to him. He's putting them in the boxes. DHL come take them away. So we were like...
Made it work,
yeah.
That's great. And one of the things that we noticed, because I guess we're in October, sober October is a big thing. We have, about half our listeners are still sober curious, but I think are very mindful of changing their relationship with drinking. One of the ones that we tried when we got sent some that I'd never tried before was the Paradiso, which I believe is probably the lowest calorie beer that I've tried
in the world.
Is it?
Dude, honestly, when you sent us that stuff and we were going through it and we were doing our we're not, we're new to this whole fucking influencer game, so right, what are we going to say about this bit? What are we going to say about this bit? And we both looked at it, weren't we? And we were like,
that can't be right.
That cannot be right. We were thinking it was per 50 mil or per 100 mil, and then we looked at it and we were like, oh my god.
Well, do you know what? Actually, the thing that my expectation before I drank that was that it was going to taste like dog shit. Yeah, because
you're like, there's nothing in it.
Also we've tried a few other, I'm not going to name them, low calorie non-alcoholic brands, and they've tasted like horse shit. So to actually have that, and I was like, holy shit, this is really good.
And we tell you if it wasn't, because we try and have pure honesty on this podcast. But we fucking, and the brandings are unreal on that.
It's really good. Well. And I actually thought especially in this place at the moment where you've got So a lot of people that are doing like Sober October pivot to like fitness, are very mindful about what they're eating, what they're drinking. What an amazing idea to have like a, you know, an alcohol-free alternative that is basically like celery.
But
It doesn't taste like it, FYI. If
let me tell you this, as with all things in my journey over the last 8 years, there was no thinking behind that. There was no business plan. There was no deliberate stuff about it. And I'll tell you how it all panned out. So when we started, like I said, goal number one was we make great tasting beer that's alcohol-free. That's it. And that's all I, as a consumer, not as a owner of the brand, that's all I cared about. So we added lactose. Johnny was like, no, you put lactose in, unfermentable sugar, and they taste banging. Brilliant, great. And then the vegans arrive. And the vegans are like, no, don't get me wrong, some of my best friends are vegan, but they're like, can't drink it. It's got lactose in. It's not good enough. Why? Come on, you must be able to do it without lactose. All right, Johnny, job number 2, how do we get rid of the lactose? Vegetable glycerin. So again, we're trying to make it taste great. We could just make it without any kind of that added, it's the viscosity. It's that kind of mouth coating that gives it the flavour, the quality. So we put vegetable glycerin in, you don't have to put it in. But that's what the calories are in lactose, because it's a sugar. Yeah,
of course.
And that's why, and when you look at some of the other brands, actually, their sugar content or the calorie content is still less than alcoholic beers.
But still a lot.
Still a lot. Yeah. So we were like, ran it and then ran the checks, and we were like it's like 13 calories in this. What the hell is this? That's nuts. And Johnny's just like, it's just because we took the lactose out. That was it. And our beers as well, gluten free.
Yeah,
didn't know that.
But that's a huge. I've got so many friends that are gluten intolerant, and beer drinking was always a nightmare for them. So the fact that opens up a whole new market,
and we never knew either. We didn't intend to do it. One of the breweries that we used, as we got bigger and bigger and started using sort of more sophisticated breweries to brew the beer, one day they just picked up the phone and said, did you know that your beers are gluten-free? Like, it's just the way they come out, because we use fundamentally less ingredients than you would use in a normal beer. And then we add something called Clarex, which just like sweeps up any last tiny bits of gluten. So I probably get, I'd say, an email a day from somebody who either says, your beer contains wheat and it says gluten-free. That's wrong. That's misleading and that's mislabeling, and you need to remove it from all the shelves, otherwise I'm going to sue you. It's like, all right, calm down. Or you get somebody emailing going, this is amazing. Like, this is a gluten-free beer that I can drink. How do you get it to be gluten-free?
Yeah.
So I'm generally responding.
What's your response to the question?
First one?
What other than F off?
See you in court.
No, yeah, I'm a lawyer, don't you know? No, I'm just intrigued because what is the wheat/gluten-free?
So but fundamentally, so if you labeling something as gluten-free in this country does not require you not to have any ingredients which had contained gluten.
Right.
So whereas this gets boring. Like if you go to Australia, you go to Oz, you can't do that. So anything, even if there is no gluten in it, you've removed it all, which is perfectly possible to do. If it has at some point in the past contained gluten,
right,
you can't call it gluten-free. Right. Just labelling regulations. So in the UK, as long as it's less than 20 parts per million, you can call it gluten-free. So even though the beer contains wheat and barley,
that makes logical sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But then it's fascinating, isn't it, with the, I guess, talking about like the percentiles. We were doing a bit of research into like what is classed as a 0% beer or low alcohol beer globally, and it ranges from Sweden is like anything under 1.8, but then the UK obviously is 0.000001, isn't it? So it's like so fascinating how all these different places. Have you found that in your journey, like what you can call yourself in other markets, or have you just been very like?
I mean, I've spent the last 8 years talking about what constitutes alcohol free in this country. And at the moment, there aren't any rules around it because the legislation expired. This is where it gets really interesting. The legislation expired, so actually there aren't any rules.
Because wasn't the consultation last November? I mean, was it a year ago?
The consultation's been knocking around for years.
Yeah,
like
because we did we filled it out and then we were like, we're part of something that's going to make change. Then it was like, I mean, then the government changed, but then I don't know whether that set it all back again or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just sort of, to be honest, like the industry, the sector is just kind of like getting on with it.
Yeah,
and the sector broadly has agreed that 0.5 should be the threshold for alcohol free. And that's the same in Australia. It's slightly different in Canada. In the US, it's interesting because 0.5 you can call it non-alcoholic, but you can't call it beer.
Right.
It's just weird thing. So in the US, so we brew in Chicago, so we have a sort of small outpost over in the US, and we brew non-alcoholic malted beverages.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting because I think the most common one out there, I think, is O'Doul's. I seem to have come across quite a lot, and it's the same. It's not a lager.
No,
like
no, that's it. They don't.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because what the bigger brewers are able to do in the US, so Heinekens and Guinnesses or whatever, you don't have to call it beer. You don't need to say this is a beer because Heineken is beer, obviously.
Yeah.
So when you label it, you just say, well, this is Heineken, and it's Heineken 0.0. There you go, that's a beer. Whereas if you're a new brand, a startup brand, effectively in the US, you're saying, right, well, we're Big Drop. What's a Big Drop?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a non-alcoholic malted beverage, and then you're not allowed to call them. You're not allowed to use the words lager or stout or ale. So in the US, everybody uses colours. So it's like, this is my pale, this is my golden,
right.
And
this is my extra dark,
right? Got you.
like that. So then you got this sort of hurdle where you're trying to educate people about what it is that they're actually drinking. So it's tricky, depending on what country you are. Yeah, it's difficult.
That is interesting, isn't it? I guess for any of our listeners that are, new to Big Drop and they're going to go out and try a Big Drop right now, what would you say to go out and pick?
So I would say, if you're an ale drinker, go for the IPA. If you like the IPAs, then the Paradiso IPA, available in Waitrose.
Who, by the way, I must say, when you're talking about rubbish non-alc sections, Waitrose is the opposite. It's amazing.
Waitrose is brilliant.
Such a good spread.
The whole thing, the whole thing has been led by the retailers, in my view. The pubs are now coming around to it. I went into my local the other day, so I don't know what you're up to on time, but I went into my local the other day, and it had on a blackboard, and I was like, this is what I wanted. If this had have existed 8 years ago, Big Drop wouldn't exist, because I went in, it's an Adnams pub, which is a brewery in Suffolk, which is where I'm from. So they have their Adnams Go Ship alcohol free. So they got Adnams Go Ship alcohol free. They got Guinness Zero. They've got a selection of alcohol-free gins, alcohol-free gins. They got a cider alcohol-free. They got Prosecco, and I'm like, that's all you need to do.
Yeah,
that's it. Look at that, and then you can go into a pub, and everybody's welcome.
Very inclusive.
Sorry, I completely sidetracked you there.
No. Yeah, sorry. IPA, and if you like, darker beers, drink the stout because it's amazing.
Big Drop universe.
Big Drop universe.
Expanding, it's growing, bubbling. What's next? So there are two things that we're focused on at the moment, and the first is, as I said before, trying to get on draft. That's the key for us in terms of sales. That's where the focus is. And then the second is that we're going to launch, I think, will be our third crowdfunding campaign. So one of the great ways that you can raise money as a brand and to engage with your audience and consumers is you can raise on, there's two platforms in the UK, Seedrs and Crowdcube. And we use Seedrs. We've used Seedrs a couple of times. So in the next couple of weeks, I think probably by the end of October, there should be a crowdfunding campaign live so people can join the droplets. We call them droplets.
Nice.
Like yeah, we'll push that because I think it's important. And, like with our listeners have really embraced us and helped us grow. I think if you really support something that's new and you love something that's new, it's really important to support the people doing it, because I think sometimes people think there's just magical money that grows in a tree to like build and grow something, and there's not, right? And
there definitely isn't a magic money
if there was to be
tree,
a different scenario. And Tom and I have been really vocal because we've spent so much of our own money doing this because we believe in it, and we know that it's something new to the market that's going to help people. I'm sure it's the same for you, right? It's like obviously you've got a slightly different business to run, but you still need that community.
You've got to have people who are fundamentally who are buying it and who are invested in it emotionally and psychology, and then hey, guess what? Yeah, you can also invest in it financially as well. So it is a good opportunity to build that community out. Yeah, for sure.
That's great. We'll make sure we put a link through to it, and because we're big fans.
Thank you.
Like the stuff, and like I say, I remember trying it down in Cornwall, and I had it. And I was like, this is great. And
mate, it was one of our, because we launched our first episode June 23.
Yeah.
And you went on holiday, I think, in the August of 23. And if you go back into our archives, one of our probably fourth or fifth episodes was you banging on about Big Drop.
Yeah, I loved it. And it just, when some, like, you have certain like tastes and things that just remind you of a place. And for me, it's that. And I was like, that was like, you know, probably in the infancy of my like sobriety per se. I was down. It was like, I'm on holiday. This is what's available. Fuck all else was down there as well.
Like,
and it was great. And I was like, yeah, this is wicked. And I remember like buying a load and so I'm a big fan.
Good.
You know,
always pleased to meet a fan.
Yeah, there you go.
Mate, well, thank you so much for taking the journey, and thanks for having us, and thank you for being one of our heroes of the Zeros.
I didn't know I was a hero. Yeah, I'll take
it.
Nice one. Well, thank you very much. I'll take it.
Mate, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.